Hello everyone. So welcome back to Bajirao IAS Academy daily newspaper analysis. So today is 25th July 2024 and today there are some important articles in this session. So we will try to discuss all those important articles in a detailed manner. And these articles that we are going to discuss are very important, and at the same time we try to discuss them in a detailed manner so that you could understand the every aspect of these particular articles. Right, so before discussing them, let's try to solve a previous question so that yesterday I've given to you. The question was, application of somatic cell nuclear transfer technology is related to which of the following things, right? So this was the question that I have given to you yesterday, and the correct answer for this question is B, reproductive cloning of animals. So for the purpose of reproductive cloning of animals, the somatic cell nuclear transfer technology is being used, and we will understand what is this somatic cell nuclear transfer. In genetics or in the developmental biology, so this particular somatic cell nuclear transfer, so it is actually a laboratory test, right? So for the purpose of cloning animals, so this particular developmental biology where the somatic cell nuclear transfer technology involves, it is a laboratory strategy for creating a viable embryo from body cell and an egg cell. Right, so you can see how this somatic cell nuclear transfer technology is being done. The technique actually consists of taking an unnucleated oocyte, or it is also known as egg cell. For example, this is an egg cell, and this egg cell consists of nucleus, and from this particular egg cell, nucleus would be separated, and now an egg cell in which the nucleus is being removed, and then the somatic cell would be introduced into the an egg cell from which the nucleus is being removed, right? So somatic cell is being introduced into the egg cell and a new embryo is being created, right? So that is through artificial activation, a new embryo is created for the purpose of cloning animals, right? So taking an unnucleated oocyte, or it is also known as egg cell, and implementing the donor nucleus from somatic or body cell, and in fact it is used for both therapeutic and reproductive cloning purposes. That is somatic cell nuclear transfer technology, and that is being used for the purpose of creating cloned animals. So today also a very important question. So we have already discussed about this in our previous classes. We have discussed about the carbon border adjustment mechanism. So this carbon border adjustment mechanism is a plan to tax carbon intensive products such as iron, steel, cement, fertilizer, aluminium, and even electricity generation. So that is being proposed by which of the following agencies, which of the following organizations? So options are UN Environment, option B European Union, option C Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and option D World Trade Organization. So this is a very easy question because we have already discussed about this particular question in the previous classes. Try to answer this question in the comment section. And one mains practice question also. So this particular question is with respect to increasing levels of unemployment in India. So what are the reasons for the increasing levels of unemployment despite having a large number of workforce? India has been facing the problem of unemployment. So we all know that as of now we have a huge demographic dividend. So if this demographic dividend is not used in a beneficial manner, so that will be a challenge for India in the coming years, because we have a very short demographic window, and this particular demographic window should be utilized in a beneficial manner. The question is, discuss the unemployment scenario in India. So you need to briefly discuss the unemployment scenario in India by giving some data, some statistics, and what measures can be taken to tackle the unemployment wave. Right, so this question essentially has two parts. The first part, you need to discuss the unemployment scenario of India. So that essentially means that you have to give some reasons for the growing levels of unemployment in India, and then give some suggestions, some recommendations to address the problem of unemployment or to tackle the problem of unemployment in India, right? So introduce by writing about the unemployment scenario of India, by giving some data about unemployment, what are the levels of unemployment in India, and then discuss some reasons for the large scale unemployment in India. What are the major reasons for the large scale unemployment? So you have to give some reasons and then suggest some measures that can be taken to tackle unemployment problem in India. So this is the demand of the question. So this is how you need to structure the question, and then your answer will be a perfect answer. So if you look at the answer, as I have already told you, that give a brief scenario about the unemployment in India. So you can give some data about the unemployment. For example, periodic labor force participation survey. So very often comes with the data on workforce participation, a labor force participation. So this particular data shows that an increase in the worker to population ratio, right? That essentially means that increasing number of workers to the total population from 34.7% in the year 2017-18 to 38.2% in 2019-20. So that essentially means that the number of employees or a workforce has increased along with the population, along with the workforce. Workforce to total population has increased. So that is what the periodic labor force participation survey data indicating. So this is a reversal of the previous trends, so which actually shows the workforce participation after 2004 and 5. So earlier there was a decline in the workforce participation. So the change also implies, so this particular change also implies that unemployment has increased at a much faster rate than the growth in population. Okay, so that essentially means that employment has increased at a much faster rate. So employment has been increasing. So you can quote such data, and you can also write if you have any data regarding unemployment or employment scenario in India, but make sure it is relevant to the question. And then we need to briefly look at the basic causes of unemployment in India. There are a number of causes for unemployment in India. So first and foremost thing that we need to look into, the social factors. So when we talk about the social factor, caste system is widely prevalent across India, right? So the caste system, what does caste system do? It prohibit a certain caste from taking up certain profession. Okay, so there is no upward mobilization or intercaste mobilization of workforce, and that is the major impediment with respect to unemployment in India. Okay, so in fact, in big joint families having a big businesses, so many such persons will be available who do not do any work and depend on the joint income of the families. So that essentially means that there are a lot of families where they depend on the family income. They do have big businesses, but they're not part of the workforce. So this scenario also indicating that even though the people are in the working age, but they are not actually working. So this also indicates that there is a growing levels of unemployment. And apart from that, there is also a rapid growth in the population. Now the population almost reached 140 crore in India. So even though the new population census data is not yet released, but according to some estimates from United Nations, so it is we can imply that India's population has reached almost 140 crore population. But there's a growing population, but along with the growth in population, the employment rate has not been increasing, and that is one of the big problem in India, and it is also one of the main causes of unemployment. And apart from that, we need to talk about the agriculture sector. So Indian economy is dominated by the agriculture sector, because in the Indian economy 48% of the workforce have engaged in the agriculture sector. So some reports also show that more than 50% of India's population are directly and indirectly dependent on the agriculture sector. In the agriculture sector, we have disguised unemployment. where the productivity of the workers is very often zero in the agriculture sector. But the problem is that even though agriculture sector has been accommodating more and more employees, the productivity is very less. But on the other hand, the industry and manufacturing, which are very often labor intensive sectors, they are not able to create enough employment opportunities. Right? There are number of problems for that. And even service sector, when we talk about the service sector is more technology intensive and capital intensive, but it is less labor intensive. That is another problem with the service sector. But Indian economy is heavily dominated by the agriculture sector. Agriculture sector contributes only 18% to 20% of India's GDP. But large number of workforce still engaged in the agriculture sector. So that is the problem. Okay, so agriculture is underdeveloped in India. Okay, so large number of people are engaged in the agriculture sector. Its contribution to GDP is low, and per capita income of people who have engaged in the agriculture sector is low. Right, so it cannot be considered as a formal employment. So all these factors have been plaguing the agriculture as an employment provider. Apart from that, there is also fall in cottage and small industries. So don't forget, the cottage and small industries fall under the category of micro, small and medium enterprises. So yesterday itself we have discussed that micro, small and medium enterprises have a lot of potential to create employment opportunities, gainful employment opportunities. Right? But these micro, small and medium enterprises also facing number of challenges. So we have discussed that what are the challenges that they have been facing. So very often MSMEs have lack access to the institutional credit. So employees in the MSME are not adequately skilled. So there is a lack of infrastructure, lack of adoption in technology. So that has been forcing these MSMEs to either reduce their production, or over a period of time they shut down their units. So all these factors have been leading to increasing levels of unemployment. Right? So industrial development had adverse effects on the cottage and small industries. Right? The production and the productivity levels of these small and cottage industries are started declining. So there is a need that government would start a constructive reform to further revive these small cottage industries, MSMEs. So that would substantially help MSMEs to further rejuvenate themselves, revive their businesses, and it would also provide large scale employment opportunities, and it would rightly accommodate the excess workforce of the agriculture sector. And apart from that, there is also immobility of labor, and that is another problem. Right? So mobility of labor in India is very low. Right? For example, due to the attachment of the family, people do not go to far off areas for jobs. Rather, they prefer to engage in their family businesses, or they prefer to do agriculture in the rural area. So immobility of labor is another factor. Right? So factors like language barrier, religion and climate are also responsible for the lower mobility of labor to other places for employment. And don't forget the defects in the education system. Very often in our education system we emphasize on rote learning. Right? So jobs in the capitalist world have become highly specialized, highly professional. So therefore education system which emphasizes on vocational training, technical skills, technical education and market relevant skilling, so all these factors play very important role in employability of college graduates. Okay, so specialization and training is very important for the students. So therefore we need to reorient our education system to suit the needs of the industry, to suit the needs of the service sector. So that aspect was neglected by Indian education system, and that is another factor for increasing levels of unemployment in India. So therefore many people who are willing to work become unemployed due to lack of skills. They lacked skills, even though the government has been undertaking a number of measures to improve skills among people. So when we compare India's skilling with other countries, in India just 4.5 percentage of its population are formally skilled, compared to countries like South Korea where 95 percentage of its population are skilled. Right, so working age people, I'm talking about the working age people who are skilled. Right, so India need to improve the skills at a rapid pace in order to make sure that youth either get employment or they can become entrepreneurs. So that is also very important for the job creation. Right, so we need to talk about the way forward also, because this is the second part of the question. Right, so we need to think the economic development models. So economic development models in the sense that, so we need to shift the excess workforce which is located in the agriculture sector to industry and service sector. Right, so industry and manufacturing have a huge potential to accommodate excess workforce. So even though service sector, it is capital intensive and technology intensive, less labor intensive, so we need to try and accommodate excess workforce in the agriculture sector and shift them from agriculture to manufacturing industry and the service sector. So that is very important to create employment opportunities for a large scale youth in the formal sector. So therefore, we need to seriously rethink our economic development models. So these economic development models should also address the economic growth and economic development, along with creating large scale employment opportunities for India's youth. And apart from that, so we need to generate employment in manufacturing and services also. As I've already discussed about this, the urgent need is to generate much more employment in the manufacturing and service sector also. So manufacturing, without a doubt, is a labor intensive sector. So it could offer more jobs compared to the other sectors. So how can we create more and more jobs? How can we further encourage manufacturing and industry sector? So we need to bring changes in the existing labor laws, right? So because the labor laws which are in India, they very often discourage industry to adopt the labor intensive production. So because of that reason, we need to bring changes in the existing labor laws. And secondly, how the government announced the production linked incentives for various industries, in a similar way, employment linked production incentives should be extended for the industries, service sector, and even the manufacturing sector, and thereby incentivizing the industries, which creates large scale employment opportunities. Right? So it encourages industries to set up a labor intensive industries. And apart from that, we should not forget that the government should give a special assistance for the labor intensive economic activities that could rejuvenate these manufacturing and industries, so which could create large scale employment when government has been providing special assistance for such industries. And we should also promote labor intensive industries. Remember, there are certain industries which are considered as labor intensive industries in India. For example, leather processing, footwear is considered as labor intensive, and food processing is considered as a labor intensive industry, and wood manufacturer, furniture making, textiles and apparel, garments. So all these industries are a large scale employment generators. They are also known as labor intensive industries, and therefore the government must extend special assistance to such labor intensive industries, so that would encourage and incentivize that industries and their further growth. So apart from that, the government should announce special packages, so for the individually designed for each industry are needed to create jobs. So all these incentives that the government has to create, and in conclusion, you just emphasize on the need for skill development, the need for further improving on existing education system, which should emphasizes on vocational training, technical education, industry relevant education, so that would further enhance the employment opportunities. enhancing employment opportunities. Thereby, we could use the existing demographic dividend in a much more effective manner, and that will help us become a developed country by 2047, right? In line with the Vikasit Bharat goal of Government of India by 2047, and that is how you can conclude this particular answer, right? Now, we'll discuss a few articles. They are very important and they were given in different newspapers, right? So the first article, that immunity for the president and governor that were granted through article 361 of the Indian Constitution, and this is very often in news, and we have already discussed about this in our previous lectures as well. Now when we talk about the immunity of president and governor which are granted through article 361 of the Indian Constitution, because president and governor are constitutional head, so therefore constitution has provided immunity from the criminal cases. For both president and governor were given immunity from criminal cases against them while they were in office, because they were constitutional heads and their work or their office as a constitutional head should not be impacted by these criminal cases. We need to protect the sanctity of these offices, and that's why article 361 was included in the constitution. However, the context is that recently in West Bengal, one temporary employee in Raj Bhavan, where governor's house of West Bengal, so a woman accused the governor that he sexually harassed a woman staffer in the Raj Bhavan, and she approached Supreme Court against article 361. So why? Because article 361 provide immunity for the governor, so therefore she cannot file a complaint against the governor on criminal matters. So that was the issue, but the woman staffer have been claiming that the governor of West Bengal sexually harassed her. So because of that reason, she approached the Supreme Court saying that my fundamental right under article 21 is being violated. So hence she approached the Supreme Court for the recourse for justice. So that is the context. Now Supreme Court, when she approached the Supreme Court also agreed to examine the immunities that are being provided to both president and governor under article 361 of the Constitution that violates the fundamental rights and the constitutional principles, fundamental rights of individuals and even the constitutional principles. Now the Supreme Court will look into article 361 and immunity that is being provided to the governor by the Constitution under article 361. Now we'll briefly understand what is this case. So what exactly is this case, right? So Supreme Court is examining a petition. So that particular petition was filed by a woman employee in West Bengal Raj Bhavan. Okay, so Governor C.V. Anand Bose was accused of sexual harassment and molestation on a woman employee of Raj Bhavan. And in fact, the petitioner, the woman who approached the Supreme Court, argues that the absolute immunity that was granted to the governor under article 361 of the Constitution, it undermines the fundamental rights and fairness of the legal process, and that was her contention in the Supreme Court. And she also argues that article 361 is not absolute, right? It is not absolute. Hence the Supreme Court must examine the issue of immunity of governor. And in fact, the petitioner also argues that the governor's immunity caused a negligent handling, right? So since governor had immunity, even if she go to a police station to file a complaint, so police were not ready to file a complaint against the governor because the existing article 361 and immunity that is being provided to the governor. So therefore she was contending that it delays the justice and even hindering the investigation process also. thereby denying her rights or violation of her fundamental rights. However, the Supreme Court will determine if Article 361 Clause 2, whether this particular immunity that was granted to the governor is absolute, or it can be challenged in serious cases like sexual harassment. So that particular thing will be examined by the Supreme Court. Now we'll look into it whether Article 361 grant absolute powers to the governor against the criminal cases or absolute immunity to the governor against criminal charges. Now when we talk about the scope of Article 361, so Article 361 actually does not grant a significant immunity to the governor, right? So it cannot shield the governor from extreme criminal cases which have which are actually extreme in nature, for example sexual harassment against someone. Okay, so actually it shield them from shield governor or the president from the criminal proceedings during their term as the governor. However, so one thing that we need to understand is this particular immunity that was granted by Article 361 is not absolute. It is not absolute, but the criminal proceedings cannot be initiated during the term of the governor, and that can be interpreted from the provisions of the Indian Constitution and various judgments of the Supreme Court before. So what are the judicial precedents that the Supreme Court has already provided with respect to Article 361 of the Indian Constitution? Now when we look into these judicial precedents, the previous court rulings have indicated that governors actually enjoy immunity under Article 361. So they were given immunity, but that does not prevent the judicial scrutiny of their actions. So one thing that we must understand, governors also perform the constitutional functions while they were in office. They perform constitutional functions when they were in office. But apart from that, what about the actions of the governor which are nothing to do with their constitutional functions? So therefore, Article 361 does not prevent the judicial scrutiny of their actions, especially if those actions infringe upon the fundamental rights of people. So any action of the governor, so which is nothing to do with the constitutional aspect or constitutional functions of the governor, and such actions if violate the fundamental rights, then they will be subjected to the judicial scrutiny, and that is what the Supreme Court's earlier judgments says with respect to Article 361. For example, a Rameshwar Prasad versus Union of India case, the Supreme Court stated that the civil immunity does not preclude or does not prevent challenges based on malified actions. So that is what the Supreme Court stand in Rameshwar Prasad versus a Union of India case. Right. So the current case against the sitting governor of West Bengal would set a precedent on how Article 361 would be interpreted, particularly with respect to the criminal acts so that are being committed by the governors and other high offices. In fact, if the court, while interpreting Article 361, finds that immunity does not apply to acts that violate the fundamental rights, so it actually could pave the way for a more accountability and legal recourse for the victims of misconduct by these constitutional authorities. However, in conclusion, the Supreme Court's interpretation is very, very important under article. So how Supreme Court would actually interpret Article 361, so that would decide, right? So that would decide next course of action, whether governors enjoy absolute immunity or not, whether governors and president can be held accountable for their malified actions while they were in office. So that would actually redefine the immunity of governors and potentially allowing the criminal proceedings for actions which violating the fundamental rights, so thereby ensuring accountability and justice also for the victims. right? So now we'll move on to the next important question, article. So that is with respect to the free trade agreement with UK. So we not yet signed any free trade agreement with the UK. Remember, earlier UK was part of the European Union. Through Brexit, UK got separated from the European Union. So after UK got separated from European Union, so India is very much interested to have a free trade agreement with both European Union and UK also. But we are just initiated talks with respect to the free trade agreement, but not yet finalized. But recently, one important development took place where some dignitaries from UK visited India. And in this particular visit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi reiterated that India remained committed to a free trade agreement with UK. Okay, so India committed to conclude a free trade agreement with UK. So this is what the Prime Minister Narendra Modi said after meeting a visiting Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Development Affairs, David Lammy. Okay, so he was in fact known as the highest ranking official from the UK to visit India. Now, so when we talk about India-UK Free Trade Agreement, a comprehensive strategic partnership. So we are already enjoying a comprehensive strategic partnership with UK. So that extended to different areas. Okay, so that extended to defense, security, trade, commerce, technology transfer, climate change, different areas. So we have been enjoying the comprehensive strategic partnership as of now. And India remained committed to elevate its ties further. We wanted to further enhance, increase our ties with the UK. And in fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also welcomed the bilateral technology security initiative between India and UK, and we are strongly committed to conclude the free trade agreement with UK as early as possible. That would be beneficial for both of these countries to further increase or further give a boost to the bilateral trade. And in fact, India also seeking a collaboration with the United Kingdom to deal with the relevant issues at the global level. For example, terrorism, fight against climate change, counter-terrorism, fight against climate change. All these things are very important, and India and UK have been cooperating and collaborating with each other with these globally relevant issues. And no doubt that India is an emerging superpower of the 21st century. It is a middle power. It has been growing at a faster pace. It is also expected that India would become a superpower, and it is one of the fastest growing major and emerging countries with the largest population in the world. So of course, it is true that most of these countries wanted to have a close and friendly ties with India because that would benefit their strategic interests. Now, when we talk about the free trade agreement, what is this free trade agreement? We need to briefly understand about the free trade agreement. So free trade agreement is actually a pact, or it is an agreement between two or more nations, and these nations actually aimed to reduce barriers to imports and exports among them. There are a lot of barriers. For example, imagine India. So if India wanted to import electric vehicles from US, a company called Tesla, so this particular company must pay customs duty, so must pay higher taxes. Only then Tesla can export its electric vehicles into India. But on the other hand, if we have this free trade agreement, this duties and tariffs would be substantially less or substantially declined, so that would allow a free flow of goods into each other country or one another country. So that is a pact or an agreement, so that comes part of the free trade agreement. So under the free trade policy, goods and services can be bought and they can be sold across these international borders with little taxes or no government tariffs. So there will be no quotas, no subsidies, no prohibitions to inhibit their exchange. So that essentially means a free flow of goods and services across international borders between two countries is known as the free trade agreement. So in fact, this particular concept of free trade agreement is opposite to the trade protectionism that many Western countries are started to implement in their respective countries. So they are becoming more and more inward looking and more protectionist, and that is a problem, or it is also against economic isolationism. But India, so even though we have announced that we will become self-reliant India, that doesn't mean that we'll become protectionist or we'll become economically, or we will economically isolate ourselves. That doesn't mean this. Okay, so rather we achieve self-reliance, and apart from that we will also engage with all major countries. So when we talk about India and its free trade agreements, so India earlier part of the regional comprehensive economic partnership, but due to some concerns, India came out of this regional comprehensive economic partnership. So according to some geopolitical experts, so when India came out of this regional comprehensive economic partnership, so India went into a cold storage. Free trade agreements and negotiations of India's free trade agreements went into a cold storage, a temporary halt of negotiations with other countries also. Okay, so it is another thing that we have concluded a free trade agreement with Australia and United Arab Emirates, and we are also negotiating a free trade agreement with European Union, Britain, and even Canada also. Okay, so these are the regional comprehensive economic partnership countries, 16 nations, but India was not part of the regional comprehensive economic partnership. So but in 2021, so India came with an announcement that India European talks will be initiated. So that these talks, India and European Union talks, were stalled from 2013 and they would be further resumed. So both sides, both India and European Union, would now engage in internal preparations to take these various strands of work forward. So now we'll discuss both these, European Union and India will discuss a free trade agreement. So that would be beneficial for both the parties and they would accordingly decide. So when we talk about the free trade agreements with the other countries, so bilateral free trade agreements of India are being negotiated with United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom, Australia and Canada. So as of now, the United Arab Emirates and Australia bilateral free trade agreements have been finalized. Okay, so they were already finalized and India even started having or implementing this bilateral free trade agreement with UAE and Australia also. So what should be the way forward, right? So the way forward should be India requires economic reforms. Okay, so India's trade policy framework, so whatever trade policy framework that we wanted to have, that particular trade policy framework, especially the foreign trade policy framework, must be supported by the economic reforms, and these economic reforms should be result in an open, competitive and technologically innovative Indian economy that would further benefit India's economy and that would further aid India's growth. However, nationalism, populism, nativism and protectionism and even economic isolationism exploit people's sense of being left behind and excluded from the system. So therefore we need to be careful and we should also try to have more such free trade agreements with other countries where we have a competitive advantage. So where we could benefit from such trade. Okay, so next important article is with respect to the cheetah introduction program into a bunny grasslands in Gujarat. So we'll understand about this. The context is that some of the next batch of cheetahs are being brought from Africa. So as part of the next phase of Project Cheetah. We already knew that these cheetahs, as part of cheetah introduction program, cheetahs were introduced in the Kuno Palpur National Park in Madhya Pradesh and another national park also. Okay, so as part of this cheetah introduction program, because already it has reached a saturation point, because it is held that 21 tigers, so 21 cheetahs is a saturation of Kuno Palpur National Park. So therefore now India has been looking for the alternative national parks or alternative habitat so that we could introduce more and more cheetahs into India through a phased manner from African countries. Okay, so they may be sent to this cheetah breeding and conservation center, so that was being built in sprawling grasslands of Banni in Ran of Kutch, Gujarat. Okay, so remember that these Banni area or Banni grasslands are located in Ran of Kutch, Gujarat, and in fact it is a vast grassland in the southern part of the Ran of Kutch, and that extends up to 3,500 square kilometers. And environmental experts also believed that this is going to be the best habitat for the cheetahs for the cheetah reintroduction program. And in fact, so Banni grasslands actually offer plenty of space. So it offers a plenty of space, and this particular space is more than what is available in the Kuno Palpur National Park or even Gandhi Sagar National Park in Madhya Pradesh. So therefore that essentially means that cheetahs are going to have a large and a plenty of space as their habitat, and in that particular space they would also have enough prey, so that could sustain the viable population of cheetahs. And in fact, antelope species such as chinkara and black buck so are considered as prey for the cheetah population, and both chinkara and black buck are present in this Banni landscape, thereby providing adequate prey for the cheetah population if they are introduced into these Banni grasslands. And apart from that, once cheetahs are being introduced, so that would also makes the prey balanced, more and more balanced. Okay, so apart from that, it will take years for enough prey to have in this Banni grasslands. Particularly this means cheetal is one of the main prey for the cheetahs in India. So this particular cheetal has to be brought from other habitats, and they have to be introduced in this Banni grasslands. So therefore, even if we introduce cheetahs into these Banni grasslands in Gujarat, so they would have adequate prey. Now, other thing, when we talk about the Banni grassland area, we need to talk about the Maldari tribe, which lives in the Banni grassland. So Maldari is a pastoralist tribal group, and this particular pastoralist tribal group lives in the Gir National Park Banni grassland reserve area. And in fact, in the year 2021, the National Green Tribunal actually recognized the right of Banni pastoralist tribal group, or sorry, Maldari pastoralist tribal group, to conserve the community forests in these Banni grasslands under the Forest Rights Act of 2006. And these are two significant things that you need to remember with respect to Banni grassland and Maldari tribal community. Now, as of now, 20 adult cheetahs were brought into the Kuno since September 2022. So out of 20 adult cheetahs, 13 adult cheetahs survived, and additionally there were 30 new cubs also, and therefore the population of cheetahs reached to 26 animals in India. So we could say that it is a partial success, because we have introduced 20 cheetahs and its population become 26 as of now. However, the maximum capacity of Kuno Palpur National Park or Kuno Reserve is just 21 adult animals, and therefore as of now the Kuno Reserve has 26 animals, and it pointing out towards the fact that we need to relocate the excess cheetah population. And India will need to import anywhere between 10 to 12 adult cheetahs every year. In the next 5 years, there are plans that in a phased manner, we will import 10 to 12 adult cheetahs from Namibia, South Africa and other African countries. So that essentially to groom a sustainable breeding level population. And one attractive aspect is Banni is there are no leopards. So in fact, when there are leopards in these Banni grasslands, so leopards are actually the natural competitors with the cheetahs. So when there is a no leopard population, so this is in fact helps in thriving population of cheetahs in Banni grasslands, offering similar climatic conditions. And in fact, cheetahs in Kuno are expected to released into the wild, because most of the cheetahs in Kuno Palpur National Park are large enclosures. So this is a 1 kilometer enclosure, so these cheetahs are expected to be released into the wild very soon. And following the release of all the animals into the wild, so preparations would be made for the next batch, expected to begin again from South Africa and then Namibia. So Project Cheetah, what exactly is this Project Cheetah? So Project Cheetah is India's ambitious cheetah relocation program. So this is a cheetah relocation program, and this particular program is aimed at establishing a self-sustaining population of cheetahs. So we wanted to have a self-sustaining population of cheetahs. So that would become extinct in 1950s in India, right? So we used to have Asiatic cheetahs in India, but due to hunting and poaching activities, during colonial time, cheetahs went extinct by 1950s in India. The world's first intercontinental large wild carnivore translocation project, this Project Cheetah. And Gandhi Sagar Sanctuary in Madhya Pradesh is the preferred location for the next lot of wild animals, because Kuno Palpur National Park already achieved a saturation. Okay, so bunny grassland will also be considered as a potential habitat for over a decade, right? So that is the Project Cheetah. And next important article is outlining urban transforming strategies. So what exactly the context of this article? The context is the recent budget and how this recent budget has emphasized on urban development, urban infrastructure, rejuvenation, right? The maiden budget of new government has actually underscored there are critical importance, so it actually underscored, highlighted the critical importance of the urban infrastructure development, urban growth and development. So especially at a time the ongoing urbanization trend. Okay, so because cities are very often recognized as a pivotal growth hubs, and in fact the budget also aims to develop infrastructure and to deal with the housing challenges and infrastructure challenges which are being faced by these urban areas. Now we all knew that Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, so that is a housing scheme, so with the motto housing for all, and this particular recent budget has announced that 1 crore housing units in urban areas with an investment of 10 lakh crore will be constructed, and the central government will also provide an assistance of 2.2 lakh crore. And in fact, this also include provisions for interest subsidies to facilitate affordable housing loans for the people. And apart from that, we need to talk about the rental housing for the industrial workers also, right? So a new PPP model would be developed, and this particular PPP model would aim to provide a rental housing with the dormitory style accommodation for the industrial worker. Rather than having the permanent houses, a rental housing with a dormitory style accommodation would be provided to the industrial workers, and this would be developed through the public private partnership supported by the viability gap funding provided by the central government through the private investors. And apart from that, so core infrastructure would be focused in urban areas, because there are a number of other schemes also, for example Amrut scheme and the provision of viability gap funding for PPP projects, rental housing for industrial workers, right? So funds which are being allocated for all these schemes will enhance so other facilities in these urban areas. For example, water supply, sanitation, roads and sewerage systems will be looked into and rejuvenated in the urban centers. Now we need to talk about the integrated urban planning, right? So when we talk about the integrated urban planning, so a national urban digital mission is very, very important. So this national urban digital mission essentially focused on digitizing the property and land tax records using the GIS mapping. So overall, it aimed at improving the urban management and also a financial planning. So thereby, when they have a proper tax records and digitizing the existing property, so better tax collection and financial autonomy of these municipal areas, and that would also result in better planning and development of municipal areas. And budget also focused on this transit oriented development in urban areas, right? So emphasis of budget would be on mass rapid transit systems. So these mass rapid transit systems would encourage a denser development around these transit hubs, so that would reduces the traffic congestion and even promote the economic growth as well. And we should not forget the role of introducing electric vehicles into the urban areas, because that could deal with the pollution problem, that could deal with the emissions, and that is also in line with the larger objective of reducing emissions in India, achieving the goal of becoming net zero by 2070. So budget as of now allocates 1,300 crore to promote electric bus systems in different cities. So they actually aim for eco-friendly and cost-effective urban transportation solutions in India. And this particular budget has also emphasized on the solid waste management. Proper solid waste management is also very, very important, right? So therefore emphasis will be placed on this solid waste management projects in collaboration with different states and even the financial institutions. So that would further use the viability gap funding to support and replicate successful models in urban areas like municipalities like Indore. So Indore is very often known as the cleanest city, right? And its municipal corporation is also successful, making Indore one of the cleanest city by having a well managed municipal solid waste collection machinery in place. And street vending hubs will also be established, right? So the focus will be on establishing 100 weekly street food hubs, so they are also known as HATs, so across cities under a Street Vendor Act. So that would further enhance vending zones and even result in consumer safety. So citizen participation is also very, very important for the success of urban growth, urban development and urban planning. So the budget has also acknowledged the engagement of citizens as a pivotal for successful urban development or urban transformation. So that has stressed on the role of municipalities and state governments in leveraging both union and local resources for the development of these urban areas. Okay, so that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. So if you like a video, please subscribe our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. Thank you.